high school football season is fast approaching, and I'm so excited to once again help spotlight top teams and players from all over the state, from the preseason scrimmages all the way to the state championship games in December in the Superdome and everything in between. Thanks so much for checking out Louisiana vs. All Y'all. I hope you might take a second and hit that subscribe button below. I'm Jarrett Roser, and I had a chance to team up with some top high school sports reporters from all over the state of Louisiana, from a range of print, digital, television, and radio backgrounds, to share their perspectives and previews from 10 different regions around the state as we prepare to officially kick things off in less than 2 weeks. Hopefully you may have already had a chance to check out the Class 1A video, and for Class 2A, there's really no better place to start this year than heading up to Shreveport with the legend Roy Lang III and the reigning Division III Select champion Calvary Baptist Cavaliers. You can also check out the description section below for more links to work from Roy and all of our other awesome colleagues who took some time to preview these teams. For you guys up in the Shreveport area, Calvary Baptist, the defending champions of Division III Select last year, they are itching to repeat, and so that's going to be the big storyline that we talk about here in a second in District 1-2A. Their group, along with them in that league, is D'Arbonne Woods Charter, Green Oaks, Homer, another notable team on a statewide level, the Magnolia School of Excellence, North Caddo, and then further out toward Monroe, Union Parish comes over and is with the Shreveport teams now. I know you have kept up really well with those Cavaliers, and you mentioned Devin Harper coming over from Captain Shreve. That team remains absolutely loaded.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Abram Wardell, Devin Harper, James Simon. I mean, we've gone 10 minutes, haven't mentioned his name yet. Texas running back. I mean, all you have to do is say Texas running back commit, and that certainly opens some eyes. Calvary's sort of hamstrung by their district in the past. Their district got a little bit tougher this year, and you look at they start out, how about a battle of state champions with Oak Grove. Last year Calvary played that really tough district non-district schedule, as tough as you're going to get, and ran the table. I thought that was as impressive as their run to the Dome. This year, like we mentioned, with Union Parish in there, things are a little different, but getting Devin Harper helps. That as good as they were, getting Devin Harper helps. And, kids like Julius Moss, he's going to get overshadowed on Calvary because of all the names that we've mentioned already. But how good would he be on another team that, that didn't have the stars right here? And heck, this year, his name might emerge as one of those stars. Two-way guy. He can do pretty much everything. But we can't – your boy Mark Miller would be mad if we didn't talk about defense. We talked a lot about offense, but the Miller boys are going to have something for him. And Julius Moss, like I mentioned, you always talk about offense. You always talk about Abram. You always talk about the touchdowns. And I was like, hey, welcome to 2024, football and sports. This is what. But the Miller boys are going to be itching to make a name for themselves defensively, and Calvary is just going to be. They're a state favorite for sure.
2A, you have a couple of different districts to kind of keep an eye on, and both of them have reigning state champions in them, with Union Parish and D'Arbonne Woods Charter with the Shreveport group in 1-2A, and then Oak Grove and more of those Monroe area, Northeast Louisiana teams, Oak Grove, Ouachita Christian, Mangum, Ferretti, and that whole group, Beekman Charter, Delhi Charter, Rayville. Are we looking at some potential state championship caliber teams again particularly when you talk about the Farmers and the Tigers up in Oak Grove and possibly OCS, the Eagles?
Okay, so Union has got to go through Calvary, right? And that's what's so interesting. I mean, obviously they play different, but like in that district, I can't wait to see them match up. And they've matched up before, but that's fun that you got district implications on it. OCS, I used to love this district. We got it for a little bit when it was Ferretti and OCS and all them together. Ferretti's going to be really good. Oak Grove is the favorite, I think, hands down, what they return. They got a lot of guys back from their state championship team. You look at OCS, man, they've got Luke Vidrine back at quarterback. They got to replace a lot of guys, including 9 guys on defense. And I was visiting with Stephen Fitzhugh the other day, and he was like, people don't realize that senior class that they just had lost 6 games. 5 of those games were the state champions. which is kind of mind-boggling. Like 5 of their losses came to state champions. And so that was a special group, like really good, especially defensively. And so they've got a lot of question marks. They got a kid in Macon Leonard, who's a running back, got some time last year. I think he's going to kind of burst onto the scene. But what little we saw of him, he's really fast. I mean, I think he runs like a 4.4. But he's a really fast, athletic kid that if he gets to the perimeter, he can take it to the house. So I think he's going to kind of explode on the scene. But there's just a lot of questions, man. I don't know. OCS is one of those teams that you kind of bank on every year. Like they're going to be good. They're going to figure it out. And they do such a good job of coaching those guys up and kind of figuring things out. So I wouldn't dare say that OCS is going to be bad by any means. But playing in that district, it's hard to pick them over in Oak Grove. And I think Faraday is going to catch a lot of people off guard too. They've got some really good guys coming back too that I think are going to kind of explode on the scene. Mangum also, you cannot leave Mangum out. They got Isaiah McFarland returning in the backfield. He's a hoss. And I know, if you look at what they've done through the years, they've kind of been knocking. They almost beat Oak Grove last year in the playoffs. I think that was 31-30 ball game. So, I mean, they got some studs coming back. So I'm really excited about that district. As far as Union goes, they lose quite a bit, but they return some really key pieces like Tyquarius Wilson, who is a 2-time All-State guy. They returned a young offensive. Well, they were young last year, but that was one of the things we talked about a lot last season is how young that offensive line was and how they just kind of got better and better and better. And they're coming back. And so they should be really, really good up front offensively. Question is, what's the quarterback situation look like? Is there a state title hangover for them? I don't expect there to be, but you're in a really difficult district. And, man, look at their schedule. They playing a lot of really good teams this year. When you kind of look at their non-district, in fact, I wrote some of these down. Look, the schedule's crazy. North DeSoto, Ash, and Airline in consecutive weeks to start the season. Like, come on. Plus, that district's really good.
Yeah, it'll be fun to watch. I mean, those two districts and some of those teams you mentioned once we get eventually to playoff time in November and see kind of where they are in their progression.
I think one of the things that we're kind of interested to see is what is LCA going to be able to do? Now having a different head coach than Zach Lockhart, he's expecting it to be, the same standard, trying to maintain the standard that they've kept, always being in the championship conversation, always, being a team that, people want to put on their schedule to really have as a measuring stick. So I think that's going to be one of the biggest things that we're looking forward to see.
You have Isidore Newman that has been one of the steady 2A teams for years and been kind of knocking at the door. Can they get to the Dome finally? And coming up just short in semis and quarters repeatedly in recent years. That district with those guys, MLK Charter, Country Day, the Cajuns, Sarah T. Reed, South Plaquemine, and Walter L. Cohen. I know you've had a chance to see some of Newman in recent years and know some of what they've got back. I don't know how much you know about some of the other teams right now in that 2A district, but what can you tell us about what you're looking for from the Greenies or anybody else in that group?
Yeah, Newman is definitely the team I'm probably most familiar with, even though I actually didn't get a chance to see them last year. It was just so packed for Friday nights, and they have their own stadium, so they pretty much always play on Fridays. But I saw a little bit of in 7-on-7 and stuff like that. And Eli Friend, he's been really good. He was really good last year just for me just kind of checking in and watching the highlights. He may be the one to get him to the Dome, even despite having, Archman in the last few years prior. But I think he's gonna have a really big year for them and get them. I think what they get to quarters last year or semis, so I'd expect them to be right around that same area and maybe have a chance to get that this year. They got Jake Randall too. I had to shout out Jake Randall just because of Will Randall. That was one of my favorite guys to come through at tight end, and his brother was getting some reps while he was still there, and he's a running back, so I think he'll have a good year too.
Yeah, I really enjoyed seeing Jake for the first time as a freshman, I guess a couple years ago now, and watching the little shifty back of the younger Randall
Yeah,
compared
who
to
was like really, yeah.
the big physical tight end.
It was good too seeing Will. I actually got to cover the Sugar Bowl, and during media they had Jake was out there, or not Jake, Will was out there, and so got to talk to him and chop it up with him for a little bit. So that was cool.
It'll be interesting watching them this year. It looks like that should be their district to lead, with St. Charles making its big jump up to 4A, and that Division III can be wide open for the Greenies this year too, potentially, depending on how some of the bracket stuff falls, and that's obviously a long ways away. We'll see how it all unfolds over the next few months. But you have Baker, Capital, Dunham, Eastville, Episcopal, Northeast, and Slaughter Community all in that 8-2A. Where obviously you have the great rivalry in Dunham and Episcopal, and you've had some years where Eastville, as talented as they can be, has the ability to challenge those guys. Northeast has had some years as well. Really on down the list, where as much as we kind of watch Dunham and Episcopal, everybody kind of has their year where they're up closer to the top of that district. What does it look like in 2024 in terms of those top couple of teams that we're used to seeing make a couple of wins in the playoffs, and who their biggest challenger or challengers might be this year?
Right. Well, and one of the things I talk about, there's two other players that I'll mention in a minute that I think are dynamic playmakers that people sometimes miss, but it just came out yesterday that Elijah Haven from Dunham is the number one recruit in the nation for 2027 as a quarterback. And he's the real deal. He's as good as it gets. He's a two-sport athlete, and I don't dismiss him as a basketball player. Some people do, but I've seen him play both sports. And but as a football player, you could see, as good as he was last year, and he was great, that there was room for growth. And it's going to be interesting to see how that evolves this year. He's going to have some new people around him, so that's going to be interesting to see how they integrate that. They do have a couple of transfers in, a running back, J.J. Harris, and receiver Jarvis Washington, who could factor into the mix. So you're just going to kind of have to see. And Dunham is one of those ones in 2A. You see that a lot, where they mix and match between, they play offense and they play defense. How many plays do they play here? Where do they go? And Episcopal is going to do what Episcopal does with Travis Bourgeois as their head coach. They've got 15 starters back. That's a darn good place to start. And Reed Chauvin rushed for over 1,000 yards last year and 20 touchdowns. And then on defense, Chase Crescent had over 100 tackles. So, those are two pretty good points and players to look at. Adding Slaughter is an intriguing point to this, because they've kind of made some inroads the last couple of years. Obviously, for them, there's a real great natural rivalry there, possibility with them, Northeast and Eastville, being very, very close geographically. A lot of those kids grew up in each other's backyards. It's going to be interesting to see how they do. Baker is kind of rebuilding and retooling. Second year for this coaching program. When I talked to them about a month ago, they were pleased with the attendance and the participation in the off season. Last year, it kind of was sluggish and a little slow because they did change coaches, but the numbers are up a little bit. It'll be interesting to see if there's an upward progression for those guys, because the thing is, I think you still have Episcopal and Dunham at the top, but is there somebody who can make an upward progression this year? Would it be the newest incarnation at Eastville? And it might be. And or could it be one of these other guys? You never know. If somebody could upset the apple cart.
We talked a little bit about LCA already leaving that 4A district, but are they the team to beat back in 2A? Or, them and Notre Dame could be potentially really interesting, rejoining district together, and then Catholic New Iberia, Lauraville, kind of as keys for you in that 7-2A district. What do you see from some of those teams?
Yeah, for sure, man. I think that you're not going to come in Louis Cook's house right away and just be able to take food off of his table. So LCA is going to have to go out and prove it to him. A Louis Cook-led program is always going to run the football. They're going to play great defense as well. So I think that is going to be one of the games that we're going to have to keep our eyes on, especially when you're talking about winning district championships, having bragging rights and things of that nature. LCA, I did forget that they are moving back down to 2A. So them coming in there, obviously a lot of those guys have that experience in playing in Class 4A games. But for them to be able to show up here in this district as well, you can't overlook it, the Welsh Greyhounds as well, because they have experience and they are teams that have won historically in the past few years under Ronnie Corville, him being a young coach over there. So that district is very interested to see with those three teams, Welsh, LCA, and Notre Dame in the mix.
Look, Welsh, I think they've got the shot, especially once you get in that Division 4 bracket. I think you've got a little shot to make a little noise.
Whether it be a sense from those guys or just your thoughts on them being with LCA, and I mean, Notre Dame is a program they've run into a little bit more frequently, but to be in that group in terms of a district matchup and what that looks like come league time, some fun matchups or, the challenges at play there.
That's the difficult part. Because they've struck, the district has been just absolutely run through by Notre Dame for years and years and years now. And now you add in the Lafayette Christians and what we're going to get with Lafayette Renaissance. I don't think we really know yet. But, that district is going to be it probably is the toughest one in that Division 4, it's going to be a challenge, and that's going to be the thing that they're going to have to, with Coach Corville again, they're going to kind of have to keep the players, just keep your head above water, because the strength of schedule factor will, factor, of course, into your power ratings and all the wins, and that I think will get them the higher seed rolling into the playoffs. If you can find a way to win a couple of those games, great. I mean, regardless, just playing that type of schedule with those guys in your district is going to help them out a ton, even if they don't find a way to win those games, because it's going to be tough. That is a tough district.
In 3-2A, kind of up there in between Shreveport and Alexandria, the group is Lakeside, Mansfield, Manny, who I know is a program super well, covering the area for years, and everything that Jess Curtis and those guys did, and now the rebranding a little bit in some ways the last couple of years and throwing the ball around a little bit more. That group, Red River and Winfield. And then in District 5, 2A, Avoyelles, Menard, Kinder, Oakdale, and Port Barry. In terms of some of the top teams to watch for you from a CenLa perspective, who stands out of the 2A group?
Yeah, 2A is going to be fun and interesting too, because I think, there's a lot of changing, obviously, in that group there. I think Manny's, I'll still give them a puncher's chance there. I don't know a lot about the new guys that they have coming up, but obviously Dylan Barrett has done a very good job when he was at Grant. Who would have thought that he would take Grant to like a team where they would have 7 and 8 wins and all that. Right. And I think his first year at Manny, he showed what he can do. So now trying to build up their culture and trying to help them out. At least there's always going to be buy-in there. So I think there's going to be interest with that. Winfield's always going to be a team that's going to try to compete against them. Tank Lewis, I think, is the quarterback that they have there. Getting the chance to talk to Jay Watson with them. They really want to try to get him more in space. So he may not play quarterback this year, but they'll probably shift him and move him all around. What really hurt Winfield last year was injuries. And they had a lot of injuries. Eli Little got hurt. And of course they had to basically repair their team on the fly. And that's kind of the reason why they kind of took a little bit of a step back. And then, of course, the 5-2A districts, I think if I take a look at anybody here that I feel like, based on the continuity that they have, I feel like Avoyelles is probably going to be the better team of my 3 in that district there, because Kevin Jones, I think, is a solid cornerback, and he's going to be a guy that in that parish, a lot of people are talking about, obviously the Bunkie guys and obviously the Marksville guys, but this is another guy that I feel like that they need to talk about too, because he's going to be a lockdown corner. And, I think Avoyelles they don't have to worry about that hard schedule that they had last year. where they had to play against Southern Lab, LCA, and Turlings, but they get a much more manageable schedule. And I think playing against those teams last year, that helped them out. But I think playing against some other teams that they're going to be more comparable against is going to help them out as far as their wins. And it's going to really give them even more confidence going into the season. Menard has lost some of the guys that they had, but they're always going to play hard. Obviously, with David Perkins coming in there as a defensive coach, he's going to be as animated as a defensive coach as you're going to think that he is. And then, of course, as we always talk about Caldwell being an enigma, Oakdale's always an enigma too. But they always have a good season where you know that they're going to be 5-5, 6-4. They're going to run the ball pretty hard, and they're always going to have an athlete or two that's going to get them over the edge.
Then 7-2A, Laurelville, and then Catholic of New Iberia. Jaden Mitchell being an all-state selection there for the Panthers, and what Coach Desimo over there has done has really been able to keep that team in a polished sense, and always having them in a conversation of winning district championships. I think that is kind of wide open over there as well. Laurelville has always been a playoff team, and they have a lot of guys back with Kylan Polk and Dylan Singleton and big name guys of that nature. So we should see a really good district race over there as well.
In this 7-2A district, including, probably a couple of the leaders of that group, Catholic New Iberia, Franklin, Laurelville. They've got Delcom, Houma Christian, and West St. Mary in there. I don't know how closely you watch a lot of those teams other than knowing Houma Christian, obviously, really well. But what are kind of your thoughts on what you know about that 7-2A group, and I guess particularly the teams that are closer to your region?
Well, I do watch out for them. Houma Christian obviously is the one that I keep an eye on, but they really got some really. Franklin has been a program that's made the playoffs and won some playoff games. Franklin has a lot of great athletes. You see, not just in basketball where they win the state championship, but a lot of those basketball players are kicking butt in the football field too. Franklin is really good. West St. Mary, I know they're still building their program back up again. For Houma Christian, Houma Christian kind of surprised people last year. It was with Coach Celestine, Jamar Celestine, who is a former Terrebonne quarterback. He was a longtime Terrebonne High assistant, and he moved on to Houma Christian, I think, last year. One thing that he has brought to Houma Christian is a sense of competitiveness. They have a lot of great students at Houma Christian, but they really don't have that intensity or that fight, that desire like they have now. They didn't have that previously before Coach Celestine came in. And last year they did a really good job. They made the playoffs. They had some really good players. Joseph Landry, a really good running back. I think he's going on to Centenary and play football this year. The key is they, unfortunately for a small 2A school like Houma Christian, you're very short on numbers. So when you lose a really good senior class like that, you have to replace them. But I've seen what they had. They've been working hard all summer. They got some really good young players coming in that program. Now, can they compete with the Franklins and West St. Mary's, Catholic New Iberias? I don't think so right now. But they're not going to just give up. They're still going to go out there and they maybe play hard, maybe put up a couple of points. But the goal now for Houma Christian is, to set that, expectation where we can compete with, public, private, no matter who it is, where we're playing Franklin with 30, 40 something kids and Houma Christian only has 20 maybe, there is some differences in what they can do. But, I think, Houma Christian and what Coach Celestine have done there is they brought the expectation that, we're trying to build it so where Houma Christian can play up in class, against Franklin's, West St. Mary's, and even around here. I think this year they may play, schools like Ellender, some bigger schools that they traditionally haven't played yet. So, but Coach Celestine has done a good job. And then, Catholic New Iberia, they're pretty one of the most consistent programs. They've been good for a long time. So, I think, if you look at that district, they may be the district favorite. Franklin, man, I like what they're doing there. I think Franklin has been one of the, sleepers, I guess you could say, across the state. Not only in football but basketball. They won state last year. People were like, Franklin, really? I didn't even know Franklin had all that. But they got some really good athletes walking that hall there. So they've done a really good job at Franklin. So those are going to be some really good games between Franklin, Catholic, New Iberia, Lauraville, I think. At one of the schools. I mean, Lauraville has played some really good football. They've had some athletes, move on to Southland Conference. Maybe some from some big schools for recruiting purposes, going on to the next level. But Lauraville is pretty good. So that's going to be an interesting district. I don't know if Homer Christian is ready to, maybe win a district championship yet. That may be a year or two away. But I'm interested to see how they're going to fare against some of those established public schools like that, and even Catholic New Iberia, private school. Really good. It's just a learning process for them right now, and they're building for the future. And I think Coach Celestine is going to have those guys ready in 2, 3, 4 years to, maybe win those districts and make a playoff run in 2A. So
the 9-2A district that you're more involved with, you've got Independence with North Lake Christian right there. A kid that I would love to see at some point, the Cameron Casnave, the youngster, or I guess not quite as young anymore now at North Lake Christian, Pope John Paul II, St. Helena, and St. Thomas Aquinas. What are you looking for, particularly from your true coverage teams there in North Lake and Pope and just, I guess, the 9-2A group overall?
Yeah, North Lake, I think North Lake's a cream of the crop in that district. Pope is a close second. Coach Pike had jokingly told me not to pick him to be first, so I'll pick him to be second. That way he's got a little something to fight for. He's got a little bullet board material or YouTube material, however you want to say it. I think those two teams are the two best. They, Pope won the district last year. They return a whole bunch, including their running back, Dominic Smith, or I guess their fullback, actually. They won the ring tee. He's their fullback. He's coming off a 1,400-yard season. They returned most of their offensive line. They're going to be really good. Pope has turned a corner, I think. I went out to photo day, and they had like 80, 90 kids. Now, this includes the babies, too. This includes the 8th graders and the 9th graders. But they had 80 kids, a legit 80 kids out there, and I was shocked. Some of the players, I was like, have you ever seen a Pope day this big? And they go, no, we have not. So that's a big thing for them. I think that shows the excitement they have. And North Lake, I talked about Salmon's skill and speed. Catsnade special. Jordan Willis, who is James Willis's son, he's another special kid. They got their quarterback back in LeBlanc. He's going to be really good. They've got a decent amount of linemen back. They've got a decent amount of experience back on defense. Their defense was actually much better than I thought it was last season doing the preview for them. They only gave up something like 13 points a game on average, which of course there's some skewed in there because you earlier in the season opposed to late, but they were still a much solider unit than I remember. And I think that bodes well for them because they bring a lot back. So, Pope and North Lake was a 1-point game last year. I think it'll be a 1-point game this year, and that'll decide who wins this district. St. Thomas Aquinas is a new coach. They'll be interesting to see how he does. And St. Helena is always the X factor in this district because they have so much talent. They really do. When you see them walk off the bus, it's crazy. And then it's just a matter of how they, A, are able to utilize that talent, and B, like everyone else, stay healthy because they've got a bunch of really good players. And then, after that, those X factor players, you sort of come back to the pack. So if you have them healthy all year, that's the difference between losing a game by a touchdown or winning a game by a touchdown. And that's huge in these districts. And, last year, Pope in this district won 4 of their 5 district games by a touchdown or less, and 2 of them were on field goals in the last minute. And that's how they won a district title. They won in crunch time, and I think that'll be the story again. In that teams that are good in crunch time in this district will be able to make a run. I just think that North Lake and Pope, that matchup will be fun because it's always a good rivalry. But B, the talent level is as high for those two teams that it has been in a long time.
In the LCA Notre Dame Welsh group, we're hearing so much, obviously, about Lafayette Renaissance, and the fact that they're coming and they have put the pieces in place in terms of leadership over there to make us start to believe is this a year that they're already going to be in that mix, you think, or is it going to be more of a building process for them potentially than, I mean, coming out of the gates here already kind of early on and being at that level with the LCAs and Notre Dames and companies?
Yeah, I think it'll be a combination of both. Like those kids will be hungry and chomping at the bit to get out there and prove themselves. But when you start a program from ground zero, you got to continue to build into something and make it, what other programs around this area have been, and it's going to be hard along the way for them to get it going. But I believe over time, then they definitely will be a feasible opponent in the district.
Huge thanks again to everyone who took some time to share their info and outlooks on what should be another awesome Louisiana high school football season. Make sure to check out all of their work throughout the season, and make sure to subscribe to the Louisiana vs. All Y'all channel. I'm Jarrett Roser, and I think I speak for all of us when I say thanks so much for your passion and support of high school sports around our state. Thanks so much for tuning in here, and make sure to keep an eye out for the rest of these previews.